Yeah. Hey
guys,
everybody.
here we are.
Sorry we're a little late. We're watching the game. We've had a busy day. We're in Indiana. Oh, don't hold it down. I hold it. Yeah, well, and yeah, hold it up like that. Sorry, guys. We're real professionals in this, you see. We forgot our tripod.
We're on our bed.
We're on the hotel room bed. We are in Indiana. We had to make an unexpected trip to Indiana this weekend.
We did something today that you never want to do, and that's when your mom or dad can't make it on their own and they're in such shape where your other parent can't help them. And that's what we had to do today. We're here, Dad's in the hospital and he's not doing good at all, and he's got to go to assisted living somewhere because he has Alzheimer's and he's in this last stage of it. And it's not a fun weekend, but
here we are.
I prayed with them, and
it's been very difficult. Yeah, Tim's dad fell twice Thursday. He's been falling a lot, and like he said, in the last stages of his dementia, Alzheimer's, and his poor mom turned 92 this week and has done the best she can, but he fell twice on Thursday and busted his head open twice. She can't do it anymore.
I wish she'd come live with us.
But it's not safe for either of them. So we had to take her today to look at nursing homes and help her with understand all of that. And doing the insurance benefits and stuff. So here we are. So we're running a little late.
What a big help my wife has been today for the family, and her knowledge and know-how has been really second to none. Thank you so much, honey.
So you're welcome, baby. So we're a little late, but here we are. So it is Sanctity of Life weekend in Christian circles. Women's Right to Choose weekend, I guess. Protests going on.
Rejoice.
Your
mom was not pro-choice.
In the other circles. So I just wanted to talk for a little bit about some things, because this weekend is an important weekend to me, as I am a woman. I am a mother, so I have grown babies inside of me, 3 of them. I had 2 miscarriages, so I've lost 2. And I am also, I was that unexpected pregnancy. So I was a mistake. I was that child who was a mistake, whose mother could have chosen to have an abortion. Even though abortions weren't legal in 1969, we know that they still had them. So this is an important weekend to me, and I just wanted to talk a little bit to everybody about what it's like to be adopted. Because, and just from my perspective, because my mother did choose life, and she chose to give me up for adoption, and that takes a lot of courage. So let me first start by saying, as we all know, when a unexpected pregnancy happens, there are 3 choices. I mean, you can't go back. You can't go back and pretend and just erase it away. So you have 3 choices as a woman who's got this baby growing inside of her. There is the choice to have an abortion. There's the choice to have the baby and keep it and raise it yourself. And there is the choice to give it up for adoption. And it has struck me as I listen to the media, fortunately for me, because this is a hard time for me, that because it is personal for me, that we've been a little too busy this weekend to listen to much, and I try not to listen to much media anyway. So the adoption issue is one that I don't hear a lot addressed. I hear people talking about abort or have, and those seems to be the only 2 choices. And I just want to remind everybody there's a 3rd choice, which is to have the baby and give it up for adoption. And there are so many mothers I know of who are out there who can't have children and want children, and there are not enough people giving them up for adoption. So let me also say that I'm not casting any stones at anybody. I am grateful that I never had to face that choice, that I never had an unwanted, unplanned pregnancy. I never had to make that decision. So if you have had an abortion, I'm not judging you. I'm not holding anything against you. I love you. Jesus loves you. I'm not perfect. If you know our story, we have certainly made our mistakes. We're not perfect, so we're not judging you if you've had an abortion. That is not what I'm here to do, okay? Like I said, I love you. Jesus loves you. He's here. He died and rose again for all of us. Okay? But I am grateful that my mom chose life. And I just want to go over the 3 choices again. So abortion, I think that is used usually to, at the time, hide or erase the pregnancy, to hide the mistake that was made, or in the case of, where it was not a consensual sex, to get rid of the pain of what happened to her to create the pregnancy, the rape or incest. And I just want to say, while I'm glad I've never been faced with any of this, but I know the people that I know who have had abortions. They may have hidden the pregnancy at the time, but they didn't erase the memory. They didn't erase that baby, because they still live every day of their lives remembering that baby was growing inside of them and that they made that choice. And for some people, that memory is more difficult to deal with than others, and that everyone has their own path to walk with that and their own healing process to deal with. But I just want to make the point that abortion may terminate the life of the baby, but it does not terminate the pain that pregnancy caused. And there is still a healing process to go through. I think it takes a lot of courage and strength to have the baby and to either raise it as a single mother, or to raise, or to give it up for adoption. And I look at, I think that maybe because there's not as much focus on adoption these days, I think it maybe even takes more, because people just assume that if you are an unwed mother pregnant, that you're going to have the baby and keep it. Doesn't even seem to be like the option anymore, adoption. And I'm here to say, adopt. Give the baby up for adoption. There are people who want the baby. I'm one of those babies, right? So, I believe that every life has a purpose. I believe that every life is a gift from God, and that He has a plan for every life beginning at conception. And I'm going to have Tim read Psalms 139, 13 to 16 for you. We don't have our tripod, sorry. I think I said that though.
Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they were all written, the old-fashioned for me. For you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb.
Okay, and so I do believe that God formed me, and He knew me. He formed me in my mother's womb, and He knew who I was when I was just in that womb. And I believe that He had a plan. I believe He has a plan for every life. And I know He knew that my birth mother was going to have the courage to carry me through, and He even knew who was going to adopt me. He had a plan for my life from the beginning. And I do want to say, because I do have a lot of friends who have adopted children, and I do want to say, because I've been called out on this before, so I just want to address, when I speak about birth mother, adopted mother, I'm not saying that my adopted mother is any less of a mother. But because I'm differentiating right now. I call everybody mom. I mean, both of them. But because I'm differentiating right now, because we're talking about my adoption, I'm going to use those terms, birth mother and adopted parents. Birth parents, adopted parents. Okay, but that's not a slight on anybody. So I posted today on my Facebook page a story about Steve Jobs. Did you know that Steve Jobs was also a mistake? He was a baby whose parents did not expect to have him. They were unwed. They were college students. They met at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and you can read this story on my Facebook page about him. It's actually an article from Psychology Today. I'd heard his story sometime during the last year, but the article I found on Psychology Today was really I really appreciated that particular aspect of the story, because it talks about how his who Steve Jobs became to be, the creator of Apple, is the combination of his nature and his upbringing. So how God used, basically, they're not saying God, but I'm saying God used his DNA of his parents to these two unique people to form Steve Jobs, and then put him in the exact position he was going to need to be in to come up with this vision for Apple and to create this thing. So Steve Jobs, his, like I said, he was University of Wisconsin Madison. His parents were 23 years old, college students. They met. She got pregnant. Her parents refused to let them marry, so she left her boyfriend and went to San Francisco without even telling him, and had Steve Jobs gave him up for adoption. When she did that, she made them the Jobs, Mr. and Mrs. Jobs. I had their names written down, but they're over there. She had them promise that they would send him to college. I believe the story is at least 1 year of college. They were a lower middle class family, blue collar working family. His father was a machinist. I think his father's name was Paul Jobs. He was a machinist. He spent his weekends taking apart things and putting them back together. And Steve said that had been quoted saying that Paul Jobs was, it was just a brilliant with his hands. And so, even though he had no interest, Steve had no interest in taking apart cars and machines and putting them back together, he would go on these weekend scavenger hunts with his father and for parts, and he learned the value of quality parts. And then in Silicon Valley, where he was, there were a lot of people in that industry, and that's what he was surrounded by. And so God took this DNA from this guy and this girl and put them together to create Steve. And then God took him, she gave him up for adoption, put him in this family in Silicon Valley that put him in this home that made him uniquely equipped to become the founder of Apple. Now, for me, that was pretty awesome as someone who was given up for adoption, because when I heard the story, I was like, oh, because, back last, I think Christmas, January, when Tim and I were traveling back from Indiana, where we are now after Christmas, I remember talking to him and saying that I could see how God had taken me, had created me from the DNA of my biological father, my biological mother, and what their character traits, their unique character traits, because I know both families. My biological father died when I was 5 years old. I'm talking with my hands, but he hold it up like this. My biological father, oh, there you are, died when I was 5. And I never knew him. I never met him. I never knew him. But I do know his family now. I know his cousins. So I know his quality traits, his character traits. I know what I have that is uniquely from him, the character traits I have. I know the character traits because I did meet my birth mother and was able to be a part of that family and still part of the family. I know the character traits I had from her, and how those strengths that came from each of them created me and put me in this, he knew who was going to adopt me, and he knew what I was going to need to go through the things I was going to walk through in my life. And my mother, my biological mother, she was an unmarried young lady, 25 years old, and she did what she thought was going to be the best thing for her baby, and that was to give me up for adoption to a home to a married couple, so that I could have a better life than she could provide for me. And at the time, in 1969, when I was born, as I said, Roe v. Wade hadn't happened yet, but people were still having abortions. But it took a lot. She was really made to feel a lot of shame. And that really breaks my heart. So last year, so let me just touch for a minute about my upbringing. And I talked about how I believe that the character traits I had from both of them equipped me to go through the things that I've gone through. And I believe Romans 8:28 that God uses all things for His glory for those who love Him. And so when I mention, I'm going to glaze over because I'm not a victim. I'm just going to say that, it was not that picture perfect storybook childhood that she hoped that I would have when she gave me up for adoption. But I don't fault anybody. My adoptive parents did the best they could. And so, a early age divorce, single mom raising me and having to, get babysitters. And then I was, just hashtag me too. You get that, right? Hashtag me too. So there was trauma. There were things that happened not at the hand of my adopted parents, but in my life growing up. And the things that I went through, I truly believe if I hadn't had the nature that I did, I wouldn't still be able to glorify God in it all. And I wouldn't have the strength that I do now, and to find the positivity and to find the ways to rise above it all. So that is one thing I wanted to say. And now I want to talk a little bit about Dawn, who was my biological mother. And she, February 3rd, of 2017, we lost her. So I did find her in 1994 and by phone. In 1998, we finally met for the first time, but she was so full of shame from the very first phone call, which wasn't with me, but that's a long story. I knew from the very first time that she knew that I had found her in 1994, that she was so full of shame that she didn't want to tell her daughters, my sisters, that she had me. And she said that she would, and she would call me. And finally, in 1998, I called her on my own. We met, and she was still so full of shame that she couldn't tell them that she had had a baby and given it up for adoption. And then in 2008, I took matters into my own hands, and I contacted one of my sisters, and so that's a whole other story. But let me tell you, my sisters, she has 2 daughters, and I'm the oldest, so 3 daughters, but Jill and Kimberly, they were wonderful, and they immediately, within 2 days, they were here. Well, they were not here, but Jill lives in North Carolina. She was in Virginia with Kimberly, and they were telling her that they knew about me and that it was okay and that they didn't hold it against her and that they loved her and they wanted me and my family to be a part of their family. And they're amazing. They're amazing, amazing women. And she was an amazing woman, and she raised amazing women. And last year, and so I was in their life from 2008 and still am. So last year, I guess it's particularly hard for me, this Right to Life weekend, or Choice Right Life debate weekend, this is a year ago, is when she went in the hospital and we thought we were going to lose her. And so that was particularly difficult, because while I'm watching all this debates on television and all the marches last year, this time I'm in the hospital watching the woman who fought the fight and who was so brave and courageous to give me life, struggling for her life. And when in February, the end of January, beginning of February, when we knew, she told us that she was ready to go, to please let her go. And we each had our time alone with her. And when it was my turn to be alone with her, she shut her eyes and her mouth. Just like if you're a parent, when your kid doesn't want to talk about something or see something, they don't want to talk about it, see it, because she was just still full of shame. And I know that she loved me. I know that she cared. But she was just still so scarred from having been through what she went through to give me life. And so I just want to take some time to say, to tell you all that, when I was up on that hospital or nursing home bed with her, and I was telling her goodbye and saying what I needed to say to her, thanking her for allowing God to use her to bring me into the world, that I was overcome with emotion. And it wasn't just the emotion that she was going to be gone soon, but it was the emotion because it really hit me, really what this woman laying there had been through to bring me into the world, and that she had gone through that, and she carried those scars with her. I'm 48 years old, so I was 47 at the time, for 47 years, and she was never able to heal from them. She was never able to experience the freedom of that healing, of what she went through to bring me into the world. So I am forever grateful that she had the courage and the grace and the dignity to go through with that. And I want to take a couple of people to task here, a couple of people groups. Okay, so to Christians, I want to ask you, when you see that teenage girl or that single pregnant woman walking into your church, or you hear about her at work or in the neighborhood, are you making her feel loved? Or are you so busy? Are you so busy judging her that you're not thinking about the consequences of your actions? Are you so busy trying to deflect from your own sin that you don't care about the consequences of the hurt that you're causing when you are judging her instead of loving her? When we criticize, we Christians, we criticize the women who are having abortions, and we criticize the women who choose life. We can't have it both ways. You can't. You can't. So you have to decide what you want. And I don't think Jesus wants us to criticize them for choosing life, because he created life. So, and if you think that that girl who's pregnant doesn't know what she's done, you're wrong. She's got that every day growing inside of her, doesn't she? She does. So, and to just think about that the next time you Christians want to judge somebody. Do you want to love them or do you want to judge them? And what would Jesus do? And to everyone else who want to justify the abortion and say the baby's a mistake. And I know that I am lucky. I am lucky that I had this awesome woman who brought me into this world. And that she wasn't on drugs. She didn't have any addictions. She wasn't raped. It wasn't incest. I know there are lots of things out there, reasons why there are unplanned pregnancies. And I'm really fortunate that I wasn't one of those unplanned pregnancies. And I know that there are babies who come into the world who are addicted to crack or alcohol or some kind of drugs because their mothers are drug addicts. And I know that there are babies who are growing inside of women from really bad things. And maybe even sometimes I hear that they don't want to have the baby because they can't afford it. But I want you to look at me the next time you think that that baby's a mistake, and you remember my face, and let this be the face of a mistake. And you think about Steve Jobs, and he was a mistake too. And where would we be without Apple today? All of you iPhone and Mac app users. Okay? So, that's it. I hope you all have a great week. Bye-bye.